All right, welcome everyone. Happy Saturday to everyone out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Neil from Portal to Ascension, and you have joined the Conscious Business Initiative webinar. And this is, in particularly, a really beautiful webinar and really close to my heart because of this awareness of conscious business. So Portal to Ascension, if you guys do not know, we are an online university platform for conscious events, and we create weekly webinars on different workshops, conferences on a range of conscious topics, including conscious business. Our whole entire concept and our mission statement, and even in our articles pages, we have articles on conscious business, and that we're attempting to embed and adopt all the principles that make a business conscious, moving away from crony capitalism, moving away from the greed, into that of transparency, vulnerability, truth, not doing work and business for the sake of the shareholders, but doing it for the sake of the people and uh, the planet. So today we have a special guest, Steve Farrell, who is a part of the Conscious Business Initiative. And Steve and I actually, we just met a few months ago. When we were on tour, Ascension was on tour with Michael Tellinger, and we went to Boulder. Steve invited us to his house to hold a kind of shindig for Michael, where we can all gather and talk about how we can make this world a better place. And in that, we connected, and he shared his ideas and intention for the Conscious Business Initiative that really struck home with me, because he is finally, there's someone now finally creating some organization and structure around conscious business and attempting to assist individual organizations in adopting the principles that make a business conscious. And that's really what we need. We need some sort of structure in this. We're all doing our own thing in our own way, but if there was a way and there was a guideline what it means to be conscious that we could hold each other accountable to, then that would be really beautiful. So Steve shared his intention with me. We wanted to go ahead and start doing some webinars and working together on other levels. And then a month or two later, we went back to Boulder. We had a meeting with him at a restaurant there, and we got to connect and discuss exactly what his intentions are. And there, right then and there, is when we decided to go ahead and put together a webinar. So you guys are all a part of this right now, and I know that obviously if you're a part of this and you're joining us in Peak or wherever you are on the world, that you too see a need for us to move from what has been done with the corruption in business and politics, the lobbying, the list goes on in regards to the chaos that has ensued in regards to the business world, and have something that is more harmonious with the laws of the universe and the planet. So Steve is actually doing this. So I'm going to read a little bit from the description on the website so you can get a better idea of exactly what the Conscious Business Initiative is. Then I'm going to go ahead and play the video that he's put together with his team, the Conscious Business Initiative video. And then we're going to introduce my co-host today, who is Chireya Fox. She's going to be coming on and joining us and discussing with Steve this concept of conscious business and exactly what he's up to. So, okay, the current standard of business isn't working. It's not sustainable for life on Earth, and people are fed up. Businesses do not operate in silos. All of life is interconnected. Everything businesses do impact people, the environment, and the world around them. While businesses are the biggest source of some of our world's most challenging problems, they also offer the greatest hope and potential to help solve these problems. Therein lies an amazing opportunity to break through and upend the status quo by adopting a new conscious business model that creates prosperity and flourishing for all. To do this, businesses must develop both the awareness and skills to consciously evolve their organizations. Humanity's Team Conscious Business Initiative helps change agents, leaders, reinvent the organizations using a structured methodology and a community of practice that recognizes the interconnectedness of all life. So that's where it is. A lot of these businesses are coming from the greed mentality as us versus them, divide and conquer, not seeing how we're all interconnected. So as soon as we start seeing the interconnectedness of life and the oneness within it all, then we can start operating business more consciously. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video before we bring on Chireya. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
You've seen the headlines. Sea levels rising, greenhouse gas emissions increasing, forests, the lungs of the planet, being destroyed. And our current standard of business is part of the problem. Our Earth is crying out. The current standard of business isn't working. It's not sustainable for life on Earth, and people are fed up. We all want a bright future for ourselves and our children, but how do we join forces? Where do we begin? We now know all of life is interconnected. Businesses do not operate in silos. Everything they do impacts people, the environment, and the world around them. What if businesses adopted a new, conscious business model that creates prosperity and flourishing for all? We invite you to join humanity's team Conscious Business Initiative. It's time to break through, to upend the status quo. The Conscious Business Initiative helps businesses thrive by arming change agents and leaders with the tools to transform businesses into conscious businesses. It trains these change agents and leaders in conscious operating principles within organizations using a structured methodology that's supported by a community of practice. Grassroots activists, caring people like you, are joining to bring about this shift. A new business model is emerging through us. We're asking everyone to put their values in action at an unprecedented level. Help us fund the Conscious Business Initiative. Your gift of $15 supports inviting 15 new spiritual and business leaders to sign the Conscious Business Declaration, the first step in committing to follow Declaration principles. Your $25 gift spreads the word about conscious businesses to targeted audience via social media. Join us in revolutionizing how we do commerce. Join us in calling on business to develop both the awareness and skills to consciously evolve their organizations. Join us in showing connectedness and compassion can be integrated into society. Show you value this. Fund the Conscious Business Initiative. Whatever you can donate is appreciated. Thank you.
So a lot of you that have joined us today and will be joining us and watching the replay of this have probably attended some of our other events or are into other concepts in regards to consciousness. And the earth is changing, the earth is ascending. We're shifting into a new paradigm. And part of that paradigm is every aspect of our reality. And one part of it is the business aspect. Businesses aren't just going to go away. Businesses have the funding and the ability to rally people together and make some serious change. So we need to not only shift ourselves within, shift the environment without, but also shift the concept and the mentality behind these businesses. So I'm going to go ahead now and bring on my co-host, beautiful Chireya Fox. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Chireya.
Hey, welcome. Thank you for welcoming me to this show. Do you want me to show my video?
Yeah, please.
I can't turn it on myself.
Oh, hold on. Let me allow you to do that. Go for it.
Okay. Thank you. Very good. So here we
Okay,
are.
hey.
Coming to you from beautiful Boulder, Colorado. This is actually the same town that Steve is from. And so grateful to be here today and talk about this so very important topic. Really, business and economics is at the root, at the heart, at the hearth of humanity, because the word economy, even that's home economics, you know, it basically talked about the resources flowing into the home. And so all of business is revolving around human life and lifestyle. And we're the ones who really make the decisions, even though we forgot to a large degree that that's the case. So it's great to sort of bring it full circle and have Steve here with us today so we can dig in and discuss how we can take back our responsibility and start turning things around.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll go ahead and bring Steve on now.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, Steve, are you there?
Awesome. I am here. Yeah. Let's see. Let's just get this video turned on here. Sounds good. Well, again, thank you for having me. That video kind of sets the stage here, doesn't it? Certainly, as we're looking at hurricanes and fires in California and so on, the CO2 emissions. In this morning's paper here in the New York Times, it talks about this EPA administrator, Kathleen White, who shares that carbon dioxide is harmless, she says, and goes on to say that renewable energy is unreliable and parasitic. So, clearly we've got work to do here in the grassroots, don't we?
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, brother. And so we want to start by just talking about what conscious business is, and we're going to be the facilitators of this, and Shreya is going to jump in and ask more questions than myself. And but just want to let you just kind of take it away and let us know what this is. Start from the beginning, if you could, like why the need for conscious business and what really is it?
You bet. Well, if you want, as I start, I can just kind of take you into my personal story because you'll kind of see how I ended up here in humanities team and with my colleagues in humanities team that are involved with this conscious business initiative. It's now called Conscious Business Enterprise, and there'll be a website coming up soon. I've got incredible colleagues that work with me. Kristen Bass, the senior director of the of CBI. Other people, Craig Elkins, and many others are involved in this initiative too. But let me tell you a little bit about my personal story as we get going. I was in Silicon Valley in the 1990s, and I was in the right place at the right time as the internet was entering. In 92, they say, is when the internet really took off. And in 1990, I started a business in digital communications. I started a second one in 1997, and we took both of them from 0 to 75 million, one in 10 years and the other one in 2 years. So I was truly in the right place at the right time, having a lot of fun with that. But in the 90s, just like today, we could see, and I could see that we've got some real challenges here in this world. And in a sense, I was playing a kid's game, starting companies and growing them, and for the good of our shareholders, of which I was one. Because I was looking out at the world. I didn't have kids yet. I do now. And I was just thinking to myself, how are we ever going to create this world that we want for ourselves and for our kids and for the next generation? And this whole Darwin survival of the fittest thing is what I was seeing. And candidly, as I looked in the mirror, I could see myself as a participant in that. And I just came to the conclusion that we're all either part of the problem or we're part of the solution. And even though there were incredible things that we were doing in these companies, and in particular in the first one, ENS, it was quite conscious, actually, especially for the 1990s. That wasn't really accomplishing much, just creating consciousness in a company that grew to about 175 people. That what was really needed is for people to really step into the circle of responsibility and become involved with others and really living consciously and creating organizational structures so that the businesses can become conscious and the whole world ultimately can become conscious. And so I sold all of my interests in these companies in 2001. I helped Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote the Conversations with God books, then launch Humanities Team in 2003. And then over the years, we brought in this topic of conscious business and got really, really serious with it in 2014. When we looked out at these models, B-Lab, conscious capitalism and things, and could see that these models were not bringing the fullness of consciousness to business. And this is when we created the Conscious Business Alliance and reached out to partners around the world in Europe and Japan and in the United States to create a conscious business declaration. Let me just stop, though. I don't want to I can keep going, or we can, let me come up for air to see if there's anything you want to talk about before I go further.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, well, I did hear you talking about this at Sunrise Ranch the other week and a couple weeks ago. And one of the interesting things that came out of your story here is this concept of transparency in business. And I think, transparency is one of the, maybe I would call it an icon or an ideal of this new earth, and of those of us in the collectives who are looking to recreate the world in our own image, so to speak. And transparency keeps coming up as one key factor. So I'd love for you to discuss how that came about in your story and how it actually ended up surprising a whole lot of people, but ended up making a whole lot of sense too.
Yes, well, perfect. So let me keep going with this, because the Conscious Business Declaration does bring in transparency. It brings in economic transparency, which is the whole financial. It brings in the social, which is the aspect of the people that are working for the organization, of color, of gender, of race, etc. It also brings in ecological transparency, where we're talking about resources that are harvested here on the earth, and regenerative processes that we create around that, so that we're going beyond sustainability. We're actually planting new resources, and we're focused on regenerative processes, so we can bring back the earth to its fullness and create a flourishing earth. So let me, I referenced this alliance in 2014, and what we did in Humanities Team is we reached out to the Club of Budapest, they're based in Europe, the Goy Peace Foundation, based in Japan, and the Fowler Center for Business is an agent of public benefit, and they're out of Case Western Reserve University. And we asked these NGOs, we're an NGO, we're a nonprofit in the Humanities Team, we asked them if they felt in these other organizations that have been created, B Labs and B Corp, Conscious Capitalism, if there was a standard for a conscious business in these models, because we didn't see it after studying them. Mm-hmm. And by the way, these are great organizations. Their B Corps are doing good things, and Conscious Capitalism is doing good things. We refer to them as Wave 1 and Wave 2 organizations, and we're a Wave 3. The thing that was missing is a definition for what conscious business is. And if you go to Humanities Team, that's spelled with a Y, humanitiesteam.org, at the top you'll see Conscious Business. There's a pull down there. You can pull it down and you can go to the Conscious Business Declaration and see the 7 principles there for conscious business. One of those 7 principles is this one on transparency, that says that we need to be transparent in economic, social, and ecological dimensions across our organization. The very first principle is the one that Neil brings in as he was doing my introduction, in saying that this conscious business initiative that this alliance created, of which we're a member, brings in the interconnection of life. The first principle says that we are all part of one thing. Everything is interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. And in the video, it says, and in the thing that Neil read, it said that businesses don't operate in silos. And of course, isn't that true? Businesses are huge generators out in our community and in the world, and they're generating either positive things if they're conscious, and if they're unconscious, if it's a GMO or an animal farming company, or some of the financial services sector, or fossil fuels, candidly, it's not generating things that are nurturing this planet. So this is what this alliance took on, was to say, okay, let's define what a conscious business is. There's 7 principles, and it leads with this whole aspect that everything is interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. And so, of course, that leads into then, like Ken Wilber's integral theory and all quadrants, all levels, it says that there's an inner dimension to this oneness, and there's an outer dimension. And most of the focus is on the outer dimension, which is when we talk about people, planet, and profit, that's the outer dimension. But the inner dimension is the thing that's left out, and that's where this Wave 3 alliance comes in, where we're talking about the importance of the inner, where we go within, and we're then in touch with the sacred, and we commune with the sacred. And of course, we all have these practices, spiritual practices, prayer and meditation. My aunt, who lives here in Boulder, is an atheist, and hers just it's a practice of walking through nature, and she comes to the very same place that I do. She feels into the sacred that way. So in this Wave 3 conscious business, this is the essential thing. So no longer is the focus just on the transactional, the outer world, if we're going to give 1% of revenue to these causes. Instead, the focus becomes transformational. because we're bringing in the transcendent, and the transcendent is where we're feeling into the sacred, and we're connected with the sacred, we're communing with the sacred, and we're creating a culture in the conscious business of communing with the sacred. And so the collaboration and the decision making and so on becomes spirit-led or spirit-based, or you could call it, if you were Buddhist, you could call it source-led or source-based. So, but it's the sacred, and it's so funny that this might be considered leading edge of, we're bringing in the sacred to business, but now, candidly, should this be leading edge, or should this just be a normal practice? It's like, it's a part of our lives for many of us, most of us, all over the world. We practice it in our home. We practice it increasingly in schools, where we honor the sacred. It's a big part of our personal lives with our friends. Why did we leave the sacred at the door in business? Why did we do that? And to the extent that we did that, isn't that the reason when we were watching that video, which is talking about the things like the hurricanes and the fires and all the things that we're experiencing in the world now? Isn't that because we left the sacred at the door? Isn't that the root problem?
Yes.
And if that's the root problem, isn't it just as simple as bringing the sacred back in?
Yeah. Awareness. Awareness is key of how we impact others. And it feels like we're also shifting from a greed mentality into a connective mentality. But the greed mentality came from how things were set up on the planet with hierarchy and domination and subterfuge and trying to get for the self and not seeing the self as connected to the others. So we're healing the distortion of that non-unity experience. And as we're healing that, of course, it would come out in business as well. It would be naturally have to, because it touches, like you said, every single aspect of our lives right now is touched by what we're calling business.
Yes, it is. It's huge. And so this is why this whole conscious business movement is afoot. And the good news is like there's a movie that came out called Prosperity, a documentary. It's being circulated now on social media. It talks about conscious business. Candidly, the focus is wave 1 and wave 2 in the video, where wave 3 still needs to, I'll call it, cross the chasm, become more visible to the mainstream. But it will, because at the end of the day, if conscious business is just left on the transactional level, which is to say mostly an outer world focus, then when the next recession comes, the next challenge, or the next whatever the problem might be, businesses will just shift back into making profits and saying, well, the board of directors says times are tough. We better just let some people go and get moving. Whereas in wave 3, where we're bringing really the fullness of consciousness to business, and this whole sacred is at the center of the culture of the business or the organization, it's entirely different. It's not incremental change, it's transformative change. It's huge. It's a completely different business or a completely different organization. And that's where we're going. I know with all of who I am, that's where we're going. This evolutionary tornado has already put down. This is why we see the success of Tesla. There's a company called Unilever, which really has the inner dimension and the outer dimension working. It's based out of Europe. We live in Boulder, and of course there are many conscious companies here in Boulder with the inner and the outer dimension, and we can see how well they're doing and growing. So this is the future. And organizations that go to the front and lead have a huge opportunity, because consumers and employees and vendor chains will love them. And those that are laggards and that are dragged into this kicking and screaming, candidly, a decade from now, I don't think they'll even be around.
Yeah, they're going to get left behind. So bringing it back to the transparency question, we do have a question from Sadiq Rosenberg Greenberg, who's the founder of Earthwalk, that all of us here are connected to. And so would you mind telling this little transparency story, and then we'll get to Sadiq's question about it, because I just found that so fascinating that you were how transparent you were able to become, and that that little story that you shared the other day, I just found that to be pretty profound, because when we talk about transformation, transparency is the last thing that businesses would usually think about. Like, show everybody what we're making. What, are you kidding me? Like, except for maybe the stockholders, and then, but and so,
Yes.
would you be willing to address that a little bit here, and then we can we can ask Sadiq's question after you share a little bit about that.
You bet, absolutely. Well, I was just sharing, this was during my Silicon Valley days, and in the first company that we had called ENS, Enterprise Networking Systems, we implemented something called open book management. So you may be familiar with it. It was fairly new in the 90s. It's been around a little while now. There's a book actually called Open Book Management that explains what it is. But open book management is very powerful. When you implement it, what you do is you start out by just educating your entire team, the whole organization, in finance and how to read financial statements, an income statement, a balance sheet. A lot of people take, finance and business and stuff in college, and it's quite easy. But a lot of people never take a business course. And so reading financial statements actually is Greek. It's like, what is this income statement? What's a balance sheet? And how do they relate? So it's important that you educate the whole organization so everybody understands how what an income statement is, how it works, and what a balance sheet is and how it works. So we educated everybody on that. Then we took everybody through in regular meetings, monthly meetings, our finances, including our salaries. So everything was completely transparent. This is the cost of these products that we buy. This is our payroll. Here's people's salaries. Here's my salary. There's another co-founder, his salary, and other salaries. And this is our revenue, and this is our gross margin and our profit. And then these are some of the things that we're involved in charity and philanthropy that are important to us. Like, we adopted a high school. We were involved in a lot of other activities as well. So we go through these things with everybody, and we created a common bonus that was a big part of our salary for all of us. We all wrote on that same bonus, and the bonus was tied into growth and some of the other things that we were doing in the community. So we were one team, one family, complete transparency, with a similar feature in all of our income plans. And it was a really powerful thing. A lot of people said, "Oh my God, salaries, isn't that divisive, and didn't that create trouble?" But no, actually, that's the beautiful thing about transparency is transparency creates trust. It creates incredible trust. And so where you're doing this and you answer any question and they're not trying to hide anything, it just allows you to grow closer and operate even more interdependently, tighter as a team. To your vision line, there's a coherence. You come together to achieve the results that you're after, and you have a lot of fun and you trust each other. So it was really a big part of our success.
Yeah. Well, okay. So now Sadiq asks, and this is an interesting balance to the question. And I think it's really cool to show that you did that, and the fact that you added in a bonus so that the whole company feels like they're moving forward together, rather than just being workers. They get more buy-in, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see, I'm looking at the questions now too.
Okay.
So like Sadiq's question and these other ones, and you'll pick the questions here. But I'll just say, and you can create, Sadiq is saying, you might want to create healthy boundaries, and you can. I'm just giving, my experience with how I've done it. When we talk about oneness and everything being interconnected, there is no just like one path to the mountaintop, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really about the going within, getting in touch with the sacred, our truth, our authenticity, our integrity, and doing that. So for other people, maybe they don't want to share salaries. I don't think we should have a judgment about how we do this. I'm just sharing what my own experience was.
Right. And so there may be times, like Zeke's saying, there could be times where 100% transparency isn't the correct move, where it could potentially delay or endanger initiatives or something like that. Maybe there's a moment where you pause, or who knows, multiple different possible scenarios to that. But I guess the general idea is that moving toward a more transparent system where the people who are involved in actually providing the labor and who are receiving the products actually know what is going on with the company, so that there's a trust building there and an understanding, even training to understand how business works on the monetary end better, because I think a lot of us grew up without that knowledge at all. Do you know what I mean? We didn't know that we didn't know about business and how it worked and who made what and what salaries really were like on the higher ends and all this kinds of things. So, it becomes an education thing. And so there are two other questions here, which are kind of related. I think I want to answer Penelope's first and have your response to this as well. She's asking, how are we going to get society to follow conscious connection instead of following the mundane day-to-day working and living, i.e. in the corporate world? And I think that's part, my response is, it is that education. And, some people say we're at the beginning of the 1,000 years of peace. So, we got 1,000 years to roll out this curriculum and get, help us all get reconnected to source, and knowing that we are operating in a field and that our energies impact others. It's really education. And then from that education, experiences. Would you agree, Stephen?
Yeah, yes, I do. And again, and I'm not sure everybody believes this, but I honestly believe it with 100% of who I am. This evolutionary tornado has already put down. There is no stopping this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think one can say, well, okay, I hear what you're saying, but why do you say that? How do you know that that's true? And I just think, a lot of people are reading now about Kobe Steel in Japan and how Kobe Steel was not reporting the truth about its steel products. And this has turned into a huge scandal in Japan. And of course, that's not as well known as the VW thing in Germany with the diesel emissions, where they were cheating essentially on their diesel emissions at Volkswagen and saying that they were cleaner engines than they really were. These are just a couple of the recent examples of things that have gone on. Many of us have seen the movie The Big Short that talked about these financial services companies, back during 2008 and 9, and that almost took the planet down, right? Because what was happening is people were packaging these mortgages and these bank loans and car loans and things, housing loans, and that were really not put together with any kind of strong foundation. People were taking out loans that they should have never taken out, and then they were packaged and sold off to investors, right? And then of course this bubble burst, and wow, look, we all can remember still what happened in 2008-9. So these are just some of the recent examples. I mentioned, the CO2 emissions. Most of us know, right, that 350 is the parts per million of CO2 emissions that allows what they call rough landing. This is what Bill McKibben says at 350.org. Well, in March of this year, we went over 400. So in fact, you can Google CO2 emissions. You can see laboratories that monitor this daily. Today it's at 403. So a hard landing in terms of creating a sustainable planet is 350. We're at 403 now, and in March for the entire month, we were over 400, closer to 410. So it's no longer a focus on creating a sustainable planet. It's not sustainable now. And I'm only talking about CO2 emissions. We could talk about income inequality. We could talk about harvesting of resources on the earth. We could talk about a lot of things. And in each of these dimensions, it's not sustainable right now. So this is why Tesla with its electric automobiles is just, everybody's saying, this is awesome, go Tesla. Candidly, Tesla, I don't think has the inner dimension working. We can't see it working, but the outer is quite strong. Whereas Unilever, based out of Europe, has the inner and the outer dimension working. And go look at their products and their stock price and their management team and how that company's led, because it's a visible example of a company that's really on top of it and growing. And Paul Pullman, their CEO, has signed our Conscious Business Declaration. So if you go to the Humanities Team site, pull down Conscious Business Declaration, which, by the way, Can I just invite everybody to do that, to please pull down the Conscious Business Declaration. If you get an in or yes when you read that declaration, please sign it, invite your friends and family to sign it, coworkers to sign it, because I think probably this is a very, very conscious community, and we probably all agree that the sacred is what it's about, and the sacred needs to come into business.
Yes, and I did put a link to the Conscious Business Declaration in the chat. And now to address Suni, she's interested in the idea of synarchy, where all employees in the community collaborate to make decisions together. Have you had any experience on that, or would you want to address how some people are possibly doing that? Now, I did, before we get to your answer, Steve, I will just say that the movie, The New Economy, addresses that really well. I watched it the other night and I truly enjoyed it. And Suni and everybody, I highly recommend everybody listening get to that movie. And what are your thoughts about that, Steve?
Yeah, no, Suni, you're right on. I mean, when you're talking about synergy between employees, community, and collaborating decisions together, that is the heart of a conscious business, what Suni's talking about here. So this is really the heart of it. It's the culture of the organization, which needs to be supported by the governance structure, which incidentally is not a normal board of directors. A normal board of directors is, in this country, the way it's practiced is that these are mostly shareholders, and they say, this is what we need to do. And once a quarter, okay, this is the new direction. Everybody needs to do this. And it's mostly just financially, financial gain focus. This is how we're going to increase revenue and profit. So you need another kind of governance structure to support a truly conscious business. And then you also need a culture. In Humanities Team, we spent a year and a half creating our culture that led to this whole spirit-guided process that is our culture, which incidentally, might sound like, a year and a half, and that's complicated and so on. But, in less than 5 minutes, on right here, right now, if we wanted, we could do a little spiritual experience and all feel into the sacred, which is, into that inner place of the sacred, where we're really feeling the energy of the divine. And bam, once we get to that place, if in the organization, the collaboration and the decision-making is happening from that place, then that's that whole spirit-guided or source-guided process. Where
wow, you're speaking my language now, Steve. I have a whole book coming out on this called
Awesome.
The Heart of Collaboration. Would you like to guide us in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's just close our eyes if that feels, if we're not driving. And we can just kind of relax in to this space of oneness, of the divine. I'm going to use the term divinity within, that probably a lot of us use that term, where we're opening our crown chakra and our heart chakra, all of our chakras, but in particular, let's feel into those two, our crown chakra and our heart chakra. And then let's feel into that energy of the divine that's just beaming into the planet and all of us and humankind and the earth and the cosmos all of the time. So let's really feel into that. So if we had an umbrella up because we were being foreshadowed by things going, lists and things that we have to do, and let's just for this moment, let's drop those umbrellas and let's just feel into that energy of the divine that's now coursing through our bodies. And we can feel it as that bright light that is healing and blissful, that at its basis is this love and grace and peace. We'll just feel into that. Let's extend that now to this whole virtual community of all of us listening, so we can kind of feel into each other as well. So we're feeling into the divine and each other. And we can open the circle to our marketplace or humankind or the whole earth. We can open this as wide as we want. Where now, boom, it's almost like a tuning fork, right? We can feel into that higher frequency place a place of integrity and authenticity and love and grace and peace and all of that. Okay, and we could literally stop right now. We can come back and open our eyes. And we do these things in Humanities team and in our Conscious Business Initiative, what we call Conscious Business Enterprise. And then we speak from this place, collaborate from this place, make decisions from this place. So it's not a place of ego or small agendas. It's just a place of big agenda, the one big agenda, which is, so we're now a mission-led business. Instead of a business and a mission, we're a mission and a business because we're standing squarely in the sacred now. And it's about as simple and as complex as that.
Isn't it wonderful, everybody, to just have a conscious businessman be speaking in this language? I just love it. It's so fantastic. Speaking the language of spirit and the language of our unified field, our oneness. And, can you imagine, let's now just imagine what will the planet be like, leveraging the law of attraction and our vibrational attractor factor. What will it be like on Earth when every business does that together as a team every morning, and before big decisions they go and they connect? Just can we imagine how that's going to impact and change the entire face of the planet? Like, what would you wake up and see on Facebook, or what would be the news headlines, and what would be the result in your day and the impact in your day as you went forth to either offer goods and services or go and receive them from others? Like, can you feel the juiciness of that possibility?
Absolutely. And the really cool thing is, everybody I talk to wants to work in an environment that really is deeply in alignment with their values. And candidly, some are just tired, and worn out, and even loss of energy and enthusiasm and joy, because their workplace isn't deeply aligned with their values. So the beautiful thing here is we're deeply aligning with our values. We're all going into this place of the sacred. This is our environment that we're working in. This is how, as we're looking at products and services that we're bringing to the marketplace, it's all guided. It's a spirit-guided process that's led that way. And so, of course, it's going to be quite fulfilling for us in the organization. But, the really incredible thing is that you actually get more growth right now, too, because there are whole industry sectors where most of the businesses are unconscious. And so when you come into a sector and you create a conscious workspace like this, that's really focused on nurturing your community and the planet and so on, and your employees know that, your clients know it, your vendor chain knows it, you're a magnet, right? And you're also a magnet for consumer dollars, like with Tesla and like with Unilever. There are organic farms here in Boulder that are also magnets like that and getting incredible growth. So you really get to have your cake and eat it too, because now we're deeply aligned with our values. Our work is very fulfilling. There's the glue, if you will, which is the culture, is maintaining this whole spirit-guided thing, and the marketplace loves it and rewards it.
Yeah, and this does reflect back a little bit to the question earlier about connectivity and how how do we do this thing? Well, we do it one business at a time, one person at a time, one educational seminar at a time, one interview at a time, right? We're giving everyone permission basically to do things a different way. So those of us who were sort of like maybe, the leading edge or the canary in the coal mine, who experienced the downside and started seeing the downside, we started building up organizations such as yours, like Humanities Team and Portal to Ascension, to address these issues. And, each one of us getting inspired to do our part, like, for example, starting with signing this declaration, speaking to others about it, and just, take responsibility. We're not passive witnesses. We're each like, okay, this is one of my favorite quotes from Marshall McLuhan. There are no passengers on spaceship Earth. We're all crew. It actually brings little tears to my sentimental eyes here as, we reflect on that. Steve, this is everybody's issue, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Because, when we talk about spaceship and so on, as you know, some are saying, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Mars. This planet may not be inhabitable. You know what? It's like, no, most of us can't go to Mars. So no, let's put, and that's why this goal of conscious business is so crucial. It's absolutely crucial. This is our one planet, and we shouldn't be thinking about going to Mars. Though I guess if you had enough money, maybe that would be a cool thing to think about. But to me, that's kind of a kid's game. Let's focus on just bringing the fullness of consciousness to business, the sacred. The sacred is important in other parts of our lives. I think would all agree that businesses can't continue to generate these things that whole industries do today, and lack of transparency creates. Let's put a focus on creating a conscious planet, including conscious business. And the thing is I know we can do it in this generation. I know we can. We've got a beautiful and blessed future. It is a marathon journey. It's not going to happen tonight or in a year or even 2 years. It's a marathon journey, which means that we've got to stay healthy and be observing our own spiritual practices. And it's a day-by-day thing. But this is a worthwhile thing for humanity to all come together and focus on creating conscious business. So we've got a planet that that's right for our kids and for future generations.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. The mantra, let me just say a couple of comments really quick. The mantra that I like to say is that the energy of inclusion is much stronger than the energy of exclusion, and the energy of collaboration is much more stronger than the energy of competition. So the business paradigm right now has been that of exclusion, has been that of exclusivity and competition. And we feel that through capitalism, we can get further and further ahead doing that, but in the detriment of the planet and our consciousness, really. So what really needs to happen here is that we need to center ourselves, just like we did with that small meditation, so that we can put our egos to the side and we can connect to something greater, and then we know the true reason of why we're doing what we're doing, why we're on this planet. Are we here just to make some extra money that we won't even take with us when we pass? Or are we here to better the planet for ourselves and future generations? So it's really about the energy of exclusion. That's the same thing with the elite, the governments and politics. They've all been about exclusion. They have this true wisdom that we have, this conscious wisdom, but they're not using it and sharing it freely. So really what needs to happen is we need to share this freely, and then we can all sit down and have real conversations about how we can come together and make heaven on earth,
Absolutely. And let me just also bring in something here, because I had the good fortune back in my Silicon Valley days. I was also in Young Presidents Organization, and it was for the CEOs of companies that were under age, I think it was 45 at the time. And so a lot of the big companies in the San Francisco Bay Area were YPO members. And there were a lot of them had private jets and private resorts and all of these kinds of things. And so I lived that in an earlier chapter in my life, where I was on those private jets, going to the private resorts. And I can tell you with 100% honesty, it's a mirage, this American dream that is about just Darwin's survival of the fittest, make money and bring it back to your family. Because I listened into the stories there of what was happening in these families, with all of the huge challenges that were going on. And honestly, as soon as you achieved wealth of 10 million, you wanted 20. Once you achieved 20, you wanted 40. Once you have 40, 80, and it just kept going. It's a mirage. It's like quicksand. So it might sound like, being on that hamster wheel where we're chasing the American dream and bringing just money back could be fulfilling. But I can tell you it's not. It's not fulfilling. And as we know, it's certainly not helping the planet. So real fulfillment is of course, there's a certain amount of financial nurturing that we sufficiency, that comes back to our family. That's important. Money is a wonderful tool, but if that's the end objective, it's very unsatisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, and it comes from a slavery patterning. You know, some of what happens here on Portal to Ascension is a deep dive back into the actual history of the planet, as opposed to the sort of watered down, to say the least, history of the planet. And, you know, a lot of the very old conditioning that has happened to people has to do with a slavery mentality and a pecking order. And so if you have people who are basically conditioned to different levels of servitude, serving someone else's personal objectives that really have nothing to do with themselves, for the purpose of lifting up that person, that boss's well-being, and really is not in alignment with their own well-being, you know, that creates all kinds of distortions and patterns in the subconscious, which some of us healers, such as myself and many others, you know, we're working on helping to clear that junk out of the trunk of humanity right now, energetically, and to really come to terms with where we've been and where we're going. Because if we don't really know what our history has been, it's hard to understand why we're having the problems that we're having. And so what that does in a nutshell is it creates a great compassion when we understand that there's been wounding, that there's been an imbalance, and there's been a actual intended agenda to have people follow someone else's guidelines rather than their own source, right? We're having to redirect and recalibrate now to get everybody back up to speed with what it would even look like if your business came from your soul and your spirit, and your desire to participate was from your authentic self, not because you had to go get a job to work for somebody who's going to create something that's going to not even be helpful to the planet, but just to their own selfish agenda, right? So we're forgiving this history and all beings, all of ourselves, everyone, and all of our ancestors who co-created this now, but we're really taking a whole new look at what business could become, and how our lives could be. And so this, you know, this is where the visioning and the transformation and the education and all these deep dives come from, in terms of how to get ourselves back up. So I guess what I would want to ask in light of all that is, you know, how would you advise people who would love to start their own conscious business, or who would like to work for a company that truly is conscious? That's two different scenarios there. How would you advise people to step into this next phase, beyond this old conditioning, into the new, if they haven't felt like they could have broken into it before and actually make a living?
Yeah, well, let me share the declaration. The Conscious Business Declaration was the starting point, but if alone, it wouldn't accomplish that much, because people would just sign a declaration and that would be the end of it. So even though we're an NGO, we're a nonprofit, we went on and created what we call activation vehicles to really put conscious business out in the world. So we last year started a Conscious Business Change Agent, CBCA, training and certification. Thank you for pulling that up. Yeah, we're on the conscioussbusinessdeclaration.org site. If you go to that other link you had up, which was the humanities team site with the Conscious Business pull down, we can see from the Conscious Business pull down, there's training and certification on there. And in the training and certification program, we're taking people all the way through the training of how you start a conscious business, or transform an unconscious business to a conscious business. And it's about a 90-day class, and then there's a 90-day certification process that you can actually go as slow or as fast as you want with certification, but it's usually about 3 months for people to go to become a CBCA, Conscious Business Change Agent.
What's the URL of Humanities Team?
If you go to
Sure, you forgot the T.
Yeah, humanities team with a y.org, and then you'll see the pull down for conscious business. Yeah, we can just pull that down, and then you'll see the declaration there, but you'll also see the training and certification class. There's a class going on right now, but the next one that starts, there it is on the top. The next one that starts is in January. So some of you may, just like you said, want to go straight into a process of becoming a conscious business change agent. We have got a very moderate price. Everything we do is about half the regular commercial price. So about $2,500 to go all the way through to certification as a conscious business change agent. There's a program we're starting for for more business leaders and execs that themselves don't want to become trained, but they want to just look at conscious business and all of the segments of business and finance and marketing and culture and things like that. It's called Inspired Practices. In the second or third week of January, we'll start that program. And that's relatively inexpensive. I think it's around $300 or something. And then after that,
let me ask you this, Steve: is this to get certified to be actually going into businesses and having to meet the requirements to become a conscious business? Is that what the program's for?
Yes, that program is for coaches, trainers, consultants, entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs. So people that are serious about, Chireya, you were saying, what about people that really are in this or want to go into this? This training takes you down deep into all of the dimensions of what conscious business is and certifies you so that you can go out as a coach or a trainer or a consultant, or if you want to start a business as an entrepreneur, or if you're in an intel and you're an entrepreneur, you'll have the tools to really widely, expand these practices within your organization or start a new organization.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's awesome. Very good.
So there's also a community of practice that's a virtual community that's quite inexpensive that connects all of the faculty, the students, and the certified people around the world. It's our community of practice. That's a different pull down there at Conscious Business where you can learn about that. The thing that we're just rolling out now is for organizations that want to benchmark themselves to the declaration and want to see how conscious is the organization. So we've created a consulting practice that has a 1, 2, 3 methodology. We're actually just here very soon doing our beta of that. And in that consulting practice, what we do is we assess the organization to the declaration to see how conscious it is. Then we determine its strengths and weaknesses, its gaps. And then the third step is remedy, where we can come in and remedy those gaps by providing the coaching, the training, the whatever, in the areas where there's a deficiency to bring the business or organization fully into alignment with a conscious business.
Mm-hmm. That sounds
fantastic. And then the step after that, which we're not there yet, is to certify companies as conscious business organizations, a certification process. And we're taking our time on that because if we do it wrong, there'll be purple washing, where companies come through and get certified and they really shouldn't be certified. So we're going to make sure that we have enough rigor and depth to that process before we bring that out.
How would that differ from a B corporation?
Well, a B corporation is a first wave company. So in consciousness, just like with integral theory, you've got the outer transformation on the right and then the inner on the left. B Corps are focusing on the outer, so people, planet, profit. There is not an inner dimension. There's not oneness, interconnectedness, the sacred practices, spirit-led and guided. All of that is not in a B Corp. B Corps are great. They're our friends, but businesses do less bad when they're B Corps. We don't get all the way to flourishing or all of that, such as what we do with a truly conscious business.
I see. That makes sense. Okay. So it's sort of the next level for the metapreneur who wants to go into all-inclusiveness, like Neil was saying before, around business decisions and tuning in beyond our very own mind into that source connection.
Yes, exactly. You get to the lowest rung on the ladder there with the B Corp. So it's good. I mean, we're climbing the ladder. We're going in the right direction. It is transactional because we're not talking about the sacred. It's not an inner dimension. There's not the heart. It's not spirit-led. So it's transactional instead of transformational. And transactional, it's better than just capitalism, in its raw form, but it's leaving a big part out. We get to something much bigger that brings in the whole fulfilling and flourishing dimension when it's truly conscious. I see Sadiq's question here on purple. Yeah. I can answer that if you want.
Okay, great. Sure, please.
And Sadiq, I just wasn't using green because a lot of, we talk about greenwashing, which is more environmental and ecology. So, as we search for another color to talk about consciousness, we say, oh, well, we can call it purple washing, but it could be, it could be any color. I'm just trying to use a color that speaks to what consciousness is. Is it really conscious or not? Let's see. Are we still? Okay, there we go.
We're still on.
Yeah. So,
And Steve, I would like to actually, when you guys are ready for it, take a look at Portal to Ascension and certify us as a conscious business, because as of right now, I have my own concept of what conscious business is, and it's a very basic concept. You guys have actually developed a whole curriculum around it. So I'm being as in integrity to what my concept of it is as possible. But I would like to have the fine tuning and work with others to really, cultivate a conscious business to be an example for this new paradigm.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll come back to you, Neil, on that. So yeah, thank you for bringing that in. I'll make note of that. Again, Kristen Bay. So there's a whole team here that is working full time in CBI. I'm across CBI and humanities team. I work across the whole thing. But yeah, we have a team I know that would love to speak with you about that.
and you talked about some structures that need to be in place, some checklist kind of things that, to really get a little bit more granular and deep here in the conversation. Would you like to go a little bit more into the details of how a business becomes conscious?
Yes. You know what? Can we pull up the declaration? We'll just
Sure.
You were on that page before. Let's just scroll down because it's really short. People might be shocked to hear that it took 14 months to create a very short declaration. But the reason it took 14 months is it was global in scope because businesses are global. So that's why in Europe, the Club of Budapest, which is Irvine Laszlo, there you go. Thank you. So we can see Ken Wilber, incidentally, was involved in this. That preamble was Ken was quite involved in. And then 1 through 7 principles. There were the 4 NGOs and candidly a lot of other stakeholders that were involved here as well. But it took 14 months because when you bring in Japan's culture, Europe as a culture, and the United States, you've got a lot of different considerations. There were many things that we talked about. It took us 14 months to just get closure in this, but the awareness and the skills up top, because awareness is kind of the awakening, but it's more than just awakening to what oneness is. It's really bringing the skills of spirit guided, into the organization, which is a big jump. And then of course that first principle, everything is coming in from the first principle. We are one with humanity and all of life. Business and all institutions of the human community are integral parts of a single reality, interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. So, huge. Everything then follows from that as we go down into 2 through 7. But this little declaration really does say it all. This is what a conscious business is. We came out with this in 2015. And I haven't had anybody come to me to say there's some important feature that was left out. It's fairly high level, which is why we go through the certification process for individuals and organizations. So we can really go down deep into this, but at a high level, it really lays out the map.
Can you go ahead and read? Let's read the whole thing because we have the time and it'd be nice to presence the words. Would you like to?
Yeah, you bet. No, I'd be happy to. So in line with this reality, the purpose of business is to increase economic prosperity while contributing to a healthy environment and improving human well-being. So that's the sacred, right? We're really mission-led now. The business is second. It's about nurturing the planet and humankind with the products and services that we're providing. And that's how we're creating our economic prosperity through these nurturing products and services. Number 3, businesses must go beyond sustainability and the philosophy of do no harm to restoring or regenerating the self-renewing integrity of the earth. So, this is where we're after flourishing, right? Can you imagine in a marriage just saying, this is a sustainable marriage? It's like, oh, well, that sounds exciting. There's not much of a challenge there. How about we call it, we're going to have a flourishing, relationship. Okay.
Yes,
now
regenerative is the word that has been cropping up, first in the permaculture scene that I've been connected to for some years, because, the word sustainable had been around, but then some of the leaders were like, no, regenerative. So that's the new word for sure.
Yeah, which is awesome. So, and then, in fact, there's a summit here in Boulder in, early November 6 and 7 called the Regenerative Economic Summit. I'll be involved in that with others. So it's, this is, again, when we talk about an evolutionary tornado putting down, it's just one more example of all these things that are growing in importance and in visibility that tie into what we're talking about here. Number 4, business must operate with economic, social, and ecological transparency. And again, so that's radical transparency. It's just what you do when the sacred is in the middle of the organization.
I really noticed that earlier when you said ecological transparency, because basically what we're saying there is, here's what my company does on the earth with its products, with the products of the earth, and here's the result of that. And here's any pollution that got made, or hopefully there was none because we were careful about that and we're being transparent. So we want to make sure we're not doing something the eyes of the world would disapprove of.
Yes,
mm-hmm.
Exactly. And, in oneness and the sacred, we really don't have anything to hide, right? It's
right.
The beautiful thing about oneness and the sacred is we're doing our work. So, and, shadow work, all of the different kinds of things that are involved in living consciously. We're really, it's about really growth and development so that we can journey down this path into, deeper, more fulfilling relationships and just being the person that we want to be, in this lifetime, and make businesses and organizations operate that way too. So
and really, yeah, just one more comment on that. That's so important. What you're saying is, Spirit knows everything already anyway. So there's not, when we try to not be transparent or hide things, there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Ultimately, at the end of the day, all things are visible in that oneness. And we could talk about that as the Akashic records or what have you. And so that's not to make people feel guilty or scared. It's just kind of the basic platform of reality and how it exists. This idea of hiding is actually comes from a distortion rather than from the actual essence of the platform of reality.
Yes. And just to underscore that point, the thing I notice, and I suspect we all do on this journey into oneness, is we can actually feel into, even looking at each other just for a moment. I've just got a picture on camera, so you can't see me, but when whether it's on video like this, on Zoom, or we're meeting in person, you can actually feel into the whole person almost immediately, I find. Mm-hmm. That's what this oneness is we actually are all faces. We're all faces of the divine, that's really, or, universe, or whatever term we want to use, but we're actually we're emanations of one thing. And we can feel into each other and feel into what you're called, this, I'll call it almost nakedness of just strengths and weaknesses, things that maybe we're working on or that we've achieved mastery of. You can actually see and feel into those things, as part of this journey. So why try and hide it anyway? Might as well be open, all of us, about, yes, I have mastery here, and in these other areas, I'm working on it.
Working toward mastery. Yes.
Yeah.
That's where that compassion comes in again. It's like we're out of because the blame, shame, judgment game has been from the old distortion field. That's where it came from. And it's not a part of the new curriculum. Overcoming being damaged by judgment, fear, shame, blame is part of the new curriculum. So as we know that, we come into greater trust with one another. And that transparency becomes easier and easier because we know we're not going to be attacked for not being perfect in one area, if, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's too, right now, when this is certainly call to action time, right? We're one decision away from really living this life that we all want. There's a huge call going on now because we got these nationalist populist movements, including here in the United States and in other countries all over the world. So Progress was arrested, and it's actually not only been arrested, but it's turned around and heading the other way. It's being undone. Progress was arrested and being undone. And so now we really know that it's on all of us, right? It's on the grassroots to really come down on the field and play our role. And where we do that together, we can create this world that we want. And as we do it together, if oneness is about really radical honesty, so we don't need to pretend that we're at mastery and everything, because I candidly don't know anybody that is anyway. So, part of it can be just be having fun with as on this conscious journey. Actually, most of us are pretty far along. There's a lot of real mastery in our lives, other things we're working on, and we can just be really totally honest about that. And, in doing so, we can inspire each other. We can stretch more because we'll learn from each other. So I really believe that's, as we talk about creating tipping point and answering the call and all coming in and participating, that this is a key feature where we really are living it to the best of our ability, and we're honest about what's working and what's not.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we're getting a lot of juice out of this number 4. But some of the things you're talking about where we seem to be going backwards, we could also see that as the opening of a wound. In other words, there's been a wound and now it's becoming revealed, so that it has pushing it up to the surface for us to deal with. And that activism that you're talking about, the chaotic and crazy things that are going on in the world right now are actually literally are instigating a level of activism and awareness that hasn't been here before, where people are getting out of complacency mode and starting to realize that they too are going to have to take part in changing things. So, that part of the gift, the hidden gift of that deeper wounding will certainly bear fruit here.
Yeah, absolutely it will. So, and the whole thing, it's that upward spiral that we create through this process where we come in, we live it fully, including in the workplace. Maybe we become a conscious business change agent, or, not, some might want to do certification, but I'm using the term more generically here, of just all coming in, and especially when we're attracted to business anyway, and make business more conscious and bring full honesty and transparency to the workplace individually and collectively. And that's going to take us nowhere but an end zone, right? It's going to take us to this destination of the heaven on earth that Neil was talking about earlier.
All right. What about number 5 here?
So number 5, business must behave as a positive and proactive member of the local and global communities in which it operates. And again, the neat thing here is when you have number 1, the we are one principle, actually, each of these other ones you naturally do. So this one being positive and a proactive member of a local and global community, where you're really living in this place of interconnection and the sacred and spirit-guided collaboration and decision-making and so on. It's what you're naturally going to do. You're going to be a positive and proactive force in your community.
Yeah, and that leads to, everything from holding events for the community to donating a portion of proceeds to something. In other words, it's saying step up and step in and realize that your benefit will flourish even more as you share as an entity that's creating resources.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that again, sharing, and sufficiency, and which by the way, in humanities team, we're now 14 years old. The way we operate is we're in the process of creating sufficiency and financial abundance for the whole organization, but we're a nonprofit and we're really focused on mission, and so we're not completely there yet. And so what we do from the standpoint of income is the income goes to the people that need the income. So it's contribution is a factor, but the most important factor is the key people that are that are driving CBI and the organization, who needs income and how much. And that's where the income's going. Not
cool.
rank ordered by contribution. And again, I think oneness naturally does that. And Sadiq, I loved what you're bringing in. Yeah, for sure. This whole, you could instead of radical honesty, just talking about loving honesty, because that's really, love and truth, right, are what oneness really is. So it's a very loving, very compassionate, caring organization where the sacred is in the middle. So right on target there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Awesome.
we have a question here from Gregory. He's saying, could we extend some of these concepts for business to politics as well?
Oh, absolutely we can. Yeah. And I'm sorry, what was that person's name? Gregory, yeah. Yeah, we can, Gregory. Within Humanities Team, on our website, you'll see we have what we call oneness in the 12 spheres of life. We use Barbara Marx Hubbard's Wheel of Co-Creation, her 12 spheres model, for our oneness in 12 spheres model. In fact, we work very closely with Barbara on lots of things. But politics is one of them, is one of the spheres of life. And absolutely, it's bringing in oneness with the sacred into politics and for that matter, into education and relationships and all of the other spheres of life. And that's where we're going. We're focusing right now heavily on business because we can see that this planet that's got problems with CO2 emissions and environment and ecology and all of that, that we needed to really put a special focus on business, because where are we going to go? Since business is in a sense pulling the train, or the economy and our paycheck and income, everything comes from business. That boy, let's make business a positive force for good, instead of just anybody that makes a profit can be in business type thing. But politics is important, and I believe that when we come into the fullness of this, that absolutely politics will inherit these same values.
Follow suit, right? Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
business
absolutely.
is the leader, and then the politicians will come in line. I'm sure it's happening all at once with different people in different professions, but we certainly are getting a little traction here in the business sector. So yeah, what about number 6?
Yeah, so number 6, business that sees, honors, and celebrates the essential interconnected nature of all human beings and all life, maximizes human potential, and helps create a world that works for all. And that's just like when we're standing in the sacred, that's what we do, right? We see, honor, and celebrate the essential interconnected nature, the sacred in all human beings and all life. And in doing so, we're maximizing human potential, and we create a world that works for all. So we're bringing these nurturing products and services to market as an essential feature of the business.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so that's sort of like a deeper statement from ones above here. I was like, yeah, so what are we creating, and how do we create a world that works for all? Meaning no one's dying from pollution, no one's having to drink bad water. The fishes have a clean ocean, It's like all, I'm sure, includes the trees and the plants and the fishes and the Mother Earth itself.
Absolutely. And where we're in alignment with our deepest values here, we're standing in the sacred, that we have a spirit-led organization. All our collaboration and decision making, our culture is standing in the sacred. It's all of these things and more, and the consumer loves you. So again, when we look at millennials, which are this younger generation, young people that really want to stand in values, and they don't want to work in a workplace that's misaligned with their values. This all really lines up well. I suspect that some of the turnover that they talk about for a lot of businesses with millennials, that will be arrested where they're working in conscious businesses like this.
Mm-hmm. And the icing on the cake, the 7th chakra. What is this one?
Yeah. And this is, again, this is that one that's kind of the unexpected. We don't become a conscious business for manipulative reasons, or for for financial reasons. I mean, I don't know anybody that's coming from that place. It's usually somewhere in our heart that we feel into the sacred, we feel into consciousness, and we have some glimpse of it. There's something we read, or there's something that happens in our life that kind of opens that door of consciousness, and we get some exposure to it. And then after we sit with it and study it for long enough, we realize, oh my God, this is ultimate reality, which of course back to before Christ times, we've got in the Tao Te Ching and many of these other sacred texts, there's references to oneness. And of course, there are many scientists today that have made it their life work to talk about how everything is one. So it's a timeless truth. It's an ancient truth that we are all one. And we feel into that, and then we decide it is ultimate reality, that we're actually eternal beings, and that we want to align ourselves with our eternal self. And so we decide to fully live it. And your listeners here that are part of this program, I know, are in that category where we're fully living it. So it's that place. It's that place of authenticity, of integrity, that caused us to go down this path of with conscious business. But number 7 does kick in, where when we are aligned with oneness, the business becomes this powerful engine for creating prosperity and flourishing for all. It's the Tesla example. It's the Unilever example. It's the organic farm example, where we're getting incredible growth from, it's a boomerang effect, where we're throwing out into the universe these good things and products and services that are conscious, that are nurturing, and the universe is throwing back. The consumer is loving it, the employees are loving it, the community's loving it, and we're actually creating even more prosperity through the conscious business model.
The word be-isness comes to mind. From busyness to be-isness. Where we're being with what is and heading in a new direction of well-being for all. And now there is, in that, there's an implied question of like, well, what if people don't agree about what's conscious?
About what's conscious?
Yeah. What if people don't agree about what's conscious and what's the highest level? Like what are, in your mind, how can humanity embrace this and also really begin to listen to each other? Because what one group might feel is conscious, the other group might not agree. So how do we, in this new arena, how do we solve those kinds of problems? How do we come together and really open to decision making around, for example, a new business container getting created that might be impactful to certain groups or certain lands or things like that? Like, when we were at Sunrise Ranch, we did a little visioning. I was actually leading the conscious business group that weekend. It was a lot of fun. It was on Saturday. And one of the things we saw was this concept of a wisdom council, and eventually becoming that all business people would become that wisdom council themselves. But to get there, how do you really, somebody might have a really great idea, but what if it actually impacts people in another way and they're just not quite aware of it, or they don't take it seriously, or they just think it's silly and they want to run ahead and do what they want to do anyway? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does make sense. Yeah, so a couple of things here is this experiential thing we did earlier, where we really kind of stood in the sacred. We came into that place, we opened our hearts to that place and embraced that the divine within, divinity itself. Mm-hmm. It's a cleansing process. It's a healing process. It's a place of standing in love and integrity. And it's amazing the magic that works, where that's just a regular feature to meetings within the organization. Because it can be theistic or non-theistic. You could be Buddhist or Christian or Muslim or Jew. You could be Hindu. You can be atheist or agnostic. And where you go through that exercise, just feeling into the sacred, it's inclusive and it brings everybody in. It doesn't leave people out. So there's a certain magic that happens. Now, as I say that, let me not try and paint the picture of nirvana here either, because in an ongoing organization, There's a lot of, and where you've got all the normal challenges going on, and, with products and services and finances and health, and people, maybe getting divorced, and all of the kinds of things that are going on within an organization by the people involved. There are a lot of challenges, and this is where creating this culture within the organization, a culture of oneness, or your core values that distill how this culture works, is really crucial. And I mentioned we spent about 1.5 years creating our culture within Humanities Team that serves this Conscious Business Initiative group also, which is a part of Humanities Team. And it just lays out how we're there, in being in a spirit-led environment, and how we're helping each other, and all of these other kinds of things that we do together. And the 10th principle, the very last one, says, and where somebody decides that they want to not honor the consensus that's emerging, and maybe that's happening on a repeated basis, that they would just gracefully resign, and it's obviously not the place for them. And that there's another place, that's why we've got all of these invitations and doors that are opening in our lives. There's another place where, it could work well for them. So, the culture is the other thing. It's the foundation, it's the basement, if you will, for this whole thing, that's making sure that everybody's really is coming together in a healthy and constructive way to serve the organization and the products and services that they're delivering.
What I'm hearing in what you're saying too is that really, to dig into this process, we would need to let go of attachment to what our minds think is the right thing, as opposed to what that spirit-led decision or that spirit-led guidance might be. Because, for example, if there's a company that's already existing and it's doing damage to the environment, but changing its modus operandi might be costly or inconvenient, there would be a necessity for them to become non-attached and to actually become willing to do the thing that felt harder in order to come into alignment. Or if a group had a new idea and they actually went into that container together and found that it was harming in some way, then they might need to let go of the idea or change it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And leadership is defined in a new way too, because in this conscious organization where we're spirit-led, it's spirit-guided in the collaboration and decision-making. It's not the old style anymore where, I'm the CEO or I'm the founder, and so I'm going to, the whole group is pulling in one direction and I'm pulling in the other, and we're going to go with what I say. It doesn't work that way, right? In this conscious organization, we're really following what this whole spirit-guided collaboration and decision-making thing, and including all of the leaders, and in fact, everybody's a leader, right? It affects the whole way the organization works and the org chart. So we're not going to be pulled by small agendas. We're not going to be pulled by rank. We're pulled by spirit, by the sacred. That's the key ingredient here in a conscious organization.
So rank becomes a service, an expression of a level of service, rather than a domination factor.
Yeah, this term steward leader,
Stewardship, right.
You're a steward leader, that it's about helping to facilitate this process that is bringing the diversity of the group thinking and decision making together.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of pressure off of certain people, because now it's a spirit guided process that's guiding the whole organization through.
Mm-hmm. And there is this thing called founders syndrome, which I'm sure you've heard of, which, there's been a number of books and articles and even trainings around it for founders who are maybe sometimes these creative visionaries, these incredible visionaries bringing in huge visionary benefit and ideas and direction and leadership. And then if they get too granular as the organization builds, it can actually be disruptive in a not so good way. And people using disruptive as a positive thing these days, but it can actually hinder the growth of the organization if that founder is too attached to doing things his or her way. Because what also happens, I think, in a spirit-led organization is that the intelligence of the people on the ground doing the work would be a trickle up factor, into like what's actually working, as opposed to one person's idea of how it should work. And that's where you get into interdepartmental and intercompany communications and vetting and refining and improving processes. And, some companies have been in the past very rigid about that, but in this new world, we would be opening to the wisdom, guidance, and intelligence of all levels of people in the company to keep improving things, wouldn't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The one of the key features here is just mutual trust and respect, where you're really honoring and respecting everybody. So in the case of the founder, where this kind of thing is going on, or some other person that's maybe trying some domineering things, what that means is you're just bringing in, the group would be very honest in a loving way with that person and say, we really appreciate the role that you've played is huge and that you do play, and but we really want you to invite you to look at this because there's some challenge here right now in the organization as a result of these things that you keep doing, right? So and you do that with everybody, but you do that also with the founder and the CEO and the president and the people across the organization. Real mutual trust and respect. That oneness brings that in, where that's what the divine is. It's loving, it's trusting, it's honest, it stands in integrity. So nobody gets a get out of jail card. All of us, we're bringing something in that's not helpful to the company or the organization. The organization and its culture, it's bringing back through a process, whether it's one person approaching the individual or a group. But hey, we invite you to look at, this. This is not. There's something going on that's not helping this organization, and we just invite you to look at it.
Yeah. Again, without the judgment, and in order to create an environment in which that can happen, there needs to be a sense of safety, because I think a lot of times leadership might be kind of defensive or worried about their position, or worried they're going to be kicked out, or, worried that they're going to lose some kind of power if they were to open up the conversation that way. And so it really is a healing process on all levels of a company, not just the workers are healing here. The leaders are healing and opening to a new way of being as well, and cultivating and engendering that trust field. So I guess this is where something like guiding principles of an organization and guiding practices could really come in, including, of course, that spirit-led practice that you were mentioning.
Yeah, absolutely. Truly there isn't a get out of jail card. But one of the neat things about consciousness, and I suspect I'm maybe speaking to people, it's been part of my journey, I'm guessing is part of all of our journeys, is that thing, like before I really could see that I was an emanation of the divine myself and see that in others, when I was operating more, and I'll call it in the Western way, unconsciously, in those times I cared more about is it my idea, or am I right, or I'm the CEO, and and whatever. I thought about those things, and I cared about those things. In this conscious journey, where now I'm aligning my life with my deepest values, with my eternal self, where I see that this lifetime is actually a part of many, many different lifetimes. That it's not now, I don't really care about, I don't need to be right. In fact, it's kind of fun to say, I don't have the foggiest idea, what the answer is here. What does the group think? It's kind of fun because we let go of this need to be right, need to have the decision, that the vision that everybody embraces. We let go of those things. That in this conscious journey, it's more about just serving the big agenda, the communion with with the divine within, the communion with other like-mindeds that are part of this organization, that are all bringing in their diversity of talents. So my interests become quite different than they were, back in the old days.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, going through that inner cauldron of transformation there, that tempering of the sword and then that refinement, so that you're opening to the field more than needing to have your way. And I think, that right there is the crux of the biscuit, so to speak, whether it's a worker or a CEO or anybody else. The more that we can come out of that sort of defensiveness and vying for position or needing to have our own idea go through in a pushy kind of way, that the more that the whole company or the whole organization can become healthy. Really, it's really all about relationships at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is. It's connection, and again, we're all emanations of the divine, and there's this beautiful diversity of, we're all called to the organization and humanities team. It's a really special calling, because in a sense we almost call it a God job, because we're this reality that we are one with the divine, each other, and all of life. It's not something that's been out in the mainstream, and we see that if once it is mainstreamed, that it changes everything. And so this person that came in and said, will this be in politics? And we're talking about business. It's in everything once we mainstream it. So, it's a special calling. We're here in service to that. And, it's really that one big agenda. And we discourage any little agendas of, that we're going to be more productive and we're going to have more fun, and where we're just really serving that one big agenda.
Totally. And Sadiq has some little interesting comments about this. He's comparing business to and its founders to family and parents, and the founders are a little closer to the business, but if they don't let the village raise the child, which is the business, then they could find themselves in a pickle. Or if they give too much authority to just let anybody run amok with it, that could also not be awesome. So it is a finessing and a irrelevancy kind of thing. And I guess, that's where some of these, in terms of relevancy, the relevance of any given decision and who really has the greatest stake in it and why. Because one aspect of what a founder might do is they might actually have more information than they've even been able to divulge to the others. So it becomes a process of allowing the full picture to come out and allowing everybody to find their alignment with it, so that the most authentic, beneficial decisions can be made. And then I guess also further cultivating that trust, that if you brought somebody into the company, that there's a reason for that, and you want to bring people in that you could trust.
Yeah, it's huge, and creating that culture that you put out in the open. We could even share, if you wanted, on the Humanities Team website, or you could Google Humanities Team core values and you'll see it. We can pull it up. Okay. And these are just ours. The last thing an organization wants to do is to ever go adopt anybody else's core values. It's a very, very personal and even subjective thing that the people in the organization together create their core values. But our organization did go through the process. It was about a year and a half to create our 10 core values. And here we go. Thank you. Thanks for pulling that up. So to the best of our ability, you can see these are our 10 core values. It took us about a year and a half to create these. And it just, sets down the fence posts of what are these values that are really important to us, where we talk about working as one in our organization. How are we going to do that? So you can see courageous. You've heard me talking about the big agenda quite a bit here, awakening the world of oneness. It's interesting. A lot of these themes have been coming through, haven't they? And then servant leadership or steward leadership, we've been talking about that. Committing to personal transformation, living as one with the divine in all of life. So co-creating with our colleagues by deeply listening for inner guidance and feeling into, that's the sacred, what is seeking to emerge. Having these clear intentions, taking the initiative, be willing to take on additional responsibilities. So some of this is now the aspect of what, the passion and the devotion that are, and the clear intentions that are in with the individuals in the organization. We've talked about love and honesty, trust. So some of these other things, respect and fun, these are other themes that have been coming through. Doing more with less, trusting that the divine is providing, all of the sufficiency or prosperity. Invite, inspire, involve, these new people that are coming into the organization. And I mentioned number 10, where, after all, one organization can't be a place that everybody is going to find resonance with, right? And if it's not resonant, then it's really challenging for the person and for the organization. So if there's a continuing process of a person not feeling resonant, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the person or the organization. It just means that they probably haven't landed, in the right place to really fulfill them. So it's just creating the process for the person to kind of get in touch with that.
Right. And I mean, I guess tacit in that is that you would have already gone through the process of deeply listening to that person and then still choosing another direction. It's like, it's not like you're just like, oh, whatever, because you would have gone through this whole journey with them and felt into it and really wanted to know what they're saying, but maybe it just wasn't congruent with the rest of the team.
Yeah, it brings in, in the Conscious Business Declaration at the preamble, it says developing the awareness and the skills. And the interesting thing here is the awareness is just really understanding what oneness is and how it works. And again, probably all of us had something happen in our life, or maybe we were lucky enough to be raised by parents that instilled this wisdom as part of our growing up process. But in the skills, the organizations that are really based in oneness can still be quite different, in terms of what they're coming together, what product or service, and where they are geographically. And there are a lot of different things that come into play. And so the skills part can take organizations that are serving oneness in different directions in terms of really the whole dynamic and energy of the organization. So, I think to think that any one organization would satisfy all people everywhere, I think is just not being realistic.
And that's true too. And so, the other thing that brings to mind is usually in the hiring and firing process, there's a lot of tension and maybe even fear or worry or concern, or people are firing people to get rid of them because they don't want to listen to them because of their own agenda, so you can really see how it's like painting a deep picture of this, like we're getting the opportunity to do today, can show us how the entire landscape of how businesses are not only created, but operated, and, their foundational principles, every part of it needs to get examined. And so no longer would there be a fear if someone's leaving. It would be like, oh, wow, it's really becoming clear that, thank you for the contrast. I've gotten more clear on what I'm really here to do. And I'm going to go over to this organization because they seem more congruent, rather than feeling worried if they're going to get hired again, or if the company's going to talk bad about them and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. It creates a freedom, just a freedom of expression and a freedom of openness and authenticity and transparency and all of those things. And people will feel into the environment and feel that, oh, yeah, we're birds of a feather here. This really feels good, or it doesn't. The important thing is that the group takes the time to define what their values are, and new people coming in understand that these are the values, and then if you recruit well and you communicate well what those values are in the front end, you've got a much better chance of just bringing people on that really deeply resonate with what those values are.
Exactly. That's a little law of attraction trick there. You list out exactly what it is you're wanting to create and who what your intentions are, and then people can the clearer we are about that, better people can find us. It's just a natural law, kind of like you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also, I mentioned, we call humanities team from the beginning, we called it kind of a God job. And boy, you put yourself in service as you are, by the way, your organization here, Portal Ascension, It's awesome. I mean, I love, Neil mentioned, when I met him, and Chireya, and Neil's wife. And I mean, I just love the way you all have put your organization in service to the greater good, to the divine, to evolution. I mean, I think hopefully Neil doesn't mind me sharing, he and his wife sold their home, right? So they can just put their resources into this work, and he's sponsoring Michael Tellinger's tour and all these other important tours, and has this incredible organization and website that's all in service to life itself. And it's just, and I'm sure when I talk about boomerang effect in terms of things that have come back to Neil and his wife, and Chireya, the things that come back to you, it's just, this is, in a sense, we all have God jobs here. We're all serving that big agenda, and just amazing things that are happening in our lives and in our organization because we're in service to life.
To quote a very famous movie, we're on a mission from God.
Yeah.
That was in Ghostbusters.
Absolutely. And it's a big, I mean, I know you all believe too, while on the one hand, we've got these huge challenges, CO2 emissions, income inequality, Earth that's in peril, all these things. I think we also are optimists, at least in the medium and long term, if not in the short term, that, there is this beautiful blessed attainment that is around the corner, that if we run this marathon, so to speak, which is to say that we're really in this for the long term, we know that it's not going to happen in a week or a month or a year.
Right.
But we live these values to our best ability, that we will usher in this heaven on earth. We will.
Absolutely. The 1,000 years of peace just beginning. So we're coming near to the close of our time together today. It's been just amazing. We have, anywhere from now to 10 minutes left to kind of wrap up, and Neil's back on with us. So I wonder if Neil has any comments, and then I wonder if Steve would like to make some closing remarks.
Yeah, I would like to say that, like you said earlier, Steve, that it's happening. It's not a question of how do we make this happen. It's happening, and part of those reasons are that the corruption that we've seen, the distrust in how business has been operating, and the fact that, like you shared, we're at 400 parts per million of polluting the planet, so to speak, and other elements. We're in this position now that we have no choice but to step into conscious business. It's not like, oh yeah, we can just keep maintaining the status quo, or we can choose conscious business. It's like we have no choice but to choose conscious business if we want to keep sustaining the planet and continue being on this planet, and not try to escape from it and let it just get ruined, So everybody really needs to understand that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. When is this going to be implemented? And right now we're having the initial conversations. They're starting out small. They're getting bigger day by day. And ultimately, people like yourself are working with these high-level executives that have the bigger pull in the world, so that we can really bring these people that have a lot of momentum and bring them behind us to support what's going on.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah, absolutely. This has a certain destination. The tornado has put down. We're now moving in the direction of this earth that really works for humankind and all of life on earth. Business has a huge role to play. It can't be left out. And there are many positive developments already. Look at the Pope's encyclical, where he's bringing the values, embodied values, to life and living. So there are many positive things going on. If we can really step into this fully, and we're all, again, this is a huge conscious community, so people are living consciously in many ways now. But if we can add business to this, as a key dimension to our journey, that yes, we're going to bring the sacred, to business in our community and globally. So signing the declaration, but however you do it, and it doesn't have to be with any of the programs Humanities team has put together. We're a nonprofit, so our key objective is transforming the earth, bringing the fullness of consciousness, the sacred, to business. That's the big agenda. So, and part of that is, as consultants and trainers and entrepreneur, we come into the business and help it transform, where we start conscious businesses. But part of it is, as a consumer, I think we're probably all doing this already, but, maybe putting a spotlight on it here and saying, as consumers, really looking at brands and buying conscious brands and brands that aren't conscious, with GMO, I think we probably all avoid that anyway, but brands that aren't conscious, we steer clear of. Let's vote with our dollars.
Absolutely. That's a perfect final note for this call today. And once again, thank you so much, Steve, for coming on and sharing all this juiciness that you guys have been putting together. I did put the link to the declaration in the chat again. I would love to see everybody take a look at that. And I love the way you said, go to the website, feel into your heart, see if this is yours to do in terms of signing it. Again, it's like that coming from a very conscious place. And I really celebrate everything that you're doing. I know Neil does as well. And we're just grateful to have had you on today.
Yeah, well, thank you. And back at you, again, Portal Ascension, wow, I love what you all are doing and just the beautiful work. And I just say Godspeed to you all. Godspeed to you all. You all are providing a very important function. It's so authentic. It's so pure. And I just love your work.
Thank you, brother.
Thank
you, man. We appreciate you, Steve. Take care of yourself, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay, sounds good, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Bye, Chireya. Thank you.
Bye, Neil. Blessings, everyone. Mm-hmm.